All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. And it looks like Michael Gill is hopping in. So I am going to cue it up for Dorian Pineda to show us the Google Charts. So I kind of mentioned, hey, Michael, happy Friday. So I kind of mentioned Dorian's going to take us through this Google Charts element that we are about to release to you guys. So Dorian, if you could take us through kind of how it's made and then how it works and then how we might or someone might implement it like in an end user project would be awesome. So I don't know if I have to, can you just share your screen or do I have to do something?
Let me see.
Help me.
See the menu. Let's try it.
Yes.
You know if you guys can see that. Yep. I'm not sure if the monitor is too big. I can switch it to a smaller monitor if we need to.
Maybe could you zoom in, Dorian? I
Let
don't
me
know
see.
if it would look bad or not.
If I make this smaller, and let's see if this makes any difference. How about that?
Yeah, that looks good.
Good.
Looks
All
good
right.
for everyone.
So let's take a look. So this is Google Charts. This is the element type that we're going to release soon. It's basically just one element, and you have the ability to select the different chart type that you want to represent on that chart. So in this example that I set up here, we have an area chart, we have a bar chart, a column, a histogram, we have a line chart here, and then lastly, we have a pie chart. So all of these charts are driving off of a Bildr data collection, which actually have the data hidden here. So this is the sample data that I set up that basically drives the data points on all of these charts. So with the element type, it's gonna come with two actions that we built for this. And the first one is just a simple refresh action. Basically what that does is it's just gonna refresh the data points on the chart that you target. So for example, in my sample data, I have this value here. So if I were to change that from 1200 to 200, that's going to save the value to the database and then refresh the charts to represent that data. So if I were to put it back, it does the same thing there. So that's what the refresh action does. If I hide my sample data, the second action type that we have here is the ability to change the chart type on a specific chart that you have on the page. So for example, I created this select here with the different chart options. And right now this is targeting this first chart here. So if I toggle that to bar, notice it changes that to bar and etc. So you can just toggle between that. So in a project, if you have limited real estate and you don't want to show different charts, you can just set up this action and allow the user to change between the types as needed. So if I just set that back, and that puts it back. So let's take a look at the studio here. So this is the page that we were looking in the live view. And if we select our Google chart and go to the properties, these are the different property arguments that we have available. And can you guys see these okay? Or do we need to make this a little bigger?
I can see it pretty well. I have a big screen though.
Okay. So the first argument we have is the chart type. So this is where you can set the default. And again, this gives you the different options that we've included in this element type. The second option is additional settings, like if you want to control labeling on the chart. So if I toggle this to on, you'll notice that this shows me these additional inputs. I'm actually not using any of these because when I created my page, I just used the standard Bildr element to represent the title. But for example, if I were to use that, notice what that does is that does render that title within the chart. And you have a couple options, like if you want the title to go inside of the chart. So that's what that does here. And I'll go ahead and put it back. So that's what the title does. And then there's also other settings for the horizontal axis title and the vertical title axis. But again, those are all just options that you guys can control. So I'm going to hide those for now. The next thing that we have is the data. So this is how to set up the data on the chart. In my setup here, I'm pulling it from a data collection, but you can technically pull it from an API or anywhere you need to. The only difference is, since I'm using the Bildr data collection, I'm just using the binding under the data, as opposed of using like a set value action to set the data onto the chart, but both methods will work. So if we go to data first, under my collection list, I created a data collection just called company preferences. I'm grabbing all the fields just because I'm basically setting the full array of data into that chart. One important thing is the sort, because I want my data information to be organized by the year in ascending order. So that's what that's doing here. And if we go back to the properties, the first thing that we need to define is the reference to use for the labels. So in this case, I'm again selecting my company performance data collection, and then I'm telling the chart to use the year field for the label. For the data points, now this is an array, so you can add as many as you need. In my setup here, I basically have a sales field and expenses field, and that's what's plotting these data across these two different chart colors here that you see here.
Dorian, just to interrupt real quick, the fields that you've got selected here, are these native to Bildr? Like these are from, you set up a data collection in Bildr, you added fields to it, and then you associated them here to these input arguments for the charts element?
Exactly, and the UI is a little updated. This is a little sneak peek of the new changes that are coming with the data. But basically, if I go to my data collections, this is that collection I created, and these are just the 3 fields that I created just for this sample data. So that's correct. This is all pulling from a Bildr data collection.
But you could also pull or associate these from like an external data collection, like if you were using Airtable or
Exactly.
something else. Okay, cool.
Yeah, the only difference would be is here, instead of pulling this from a field, because the field setting is basically pulling from a data collection field in Bildr, you would either pull that from a variable, or if you already have that stored from an element, it just depends on the setup, but it's fully dynamic to get it from wherever you need with that data.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
The next argument that we have here are the colors. So if you notice here, I have this empty, so it's just setting the default colors. But if I explicitly wanted to say, just use green and yellow, then that
Ooh,
will
I like that.
and change the colors. And the way you enter those, they're just comma separated colors. So pretty straightforward. There's additional options. I'm not going to go over everything, but there are some of these that are specific to the chart type. So like this chart, this curve type, if you notice here, it does say line chart type only. It's not going to have any effect if you toggle that on an area chart. But if you do go to a specific line chart, if I go back down, so notice if I turn off the curve, then it doesn't look as smooth as with the curve method on. So you just have to keep an eye out for some of those properties based on the chart type. Let's see what else we have here. The last thing I want to go over on the properties is the animation. So if we go back to the live view and we do the refresh, that's what's doing the nice animation effect here when this gets refreshed, and it also does it on initial load of the chart. But you can control that by toggling this on and off. And you can also set the animation method and then the duration.
Very cool. I didn't realize that y'all were including that
Yeah.
on here.
So yeah, that's Google Charts. So, oh, actually, before I can just show really quick how I'm binding or setting up the actions. So the refresh, just on events, on click, it's calling this flow that I just called refresh charts too. And there's actions in here. So if we just type Google, these are the two action types that are going to come with that element type. So the first one on the list here is the chart type. This is to change it. And then the second one is the refresh. So here on the refresh, you just have one argument. It's basically targeting the chart that you're trying to refresh. In my setup, because I have multiple, I just created multiple actions pointing to the different charts. So it just updates all of them for me. And if we look at the select, this one on the change event is calling my flow called change chart type. And this one's calling the other action. There's just two arguments we're filling in. We're selecting the chart to target, and then we're selecting where we're getting the value for the chart type, which in my setup, I'm getting it from this select, which already has the values in it. And for the values, if we go to the properties, on the select, this is what's building that menu here. So the key thing to know is if you are changing the type, you do have to specify the value for the chart type to be exactly as it is in that render function.
Okay, and what are the types right now, Dorian?
Right now we have area, bar, column, histograms, line, and pie.
All right, I love pie. Okay, so quick question. What you're showing us here, it looks like you have a page and then you added the chart element a few different times. And what you did is you set each one of those element instances, like you configured the settings differently so that one would be a example of a area chart, then a bar chart, and then a line chart, like all the different options. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Cool. And then, so how did you do the select chart type? Did you just add a selection field and then you set up those actions?
Exactly. Basically, you just add a select element to the page. When you do that under the properties of a select, this is where you define the select options. That's basically the menu. And I just filled in all the values as these have to match the actual element type render function. And then you can also control the display. So like, for example, the internal value has to be area or lowercase, but my display is area with capital, just to give it a nicer look for the end user. Okay,
awesome. And so when we're talking about use cases for Google Charts, I mean, there's a ton. So one thing I can think of, like if you're building a metrics area, you could use this. And also if you wanted to build metrics for your own project. Now we are planning to do metrics at a certain level for you all, but that's really going to be more things like your usage of data and like, runtime, things like that. I don't know, Drew or Dorian, if I'm missing stuff on what we might include in metrics as well.
That's right.
Yeah, that's about right. But this would be cool if you want to see maybe like more specific things on like visitors to your site, etc. There's probably a lot of other great tools you can integrate with that'll do all of that for you. But nonetheless, you could probably use this for a few different things. So Susan is asking about a metrics area. Yes. So it's going to be really like a dashboard that's going to exist in your project settings that you can go in to see data usage, etc. So as y'all know, we're still in beta right now. So we're learning a lot, and y'all are building some of the first actual production apps that are going to be running. So we're kind of using all of that to learn what the costs will be, so that before we actually start charging for that, hopefully our pricing will be inclusive of what you need. But if you have something that like takes off super big and you're using tons of data, which is a good problem to have, that way we can kind of give you guys an idea of what you might expect the cost for that would be. And then of course, just for y'all to know kind of how your app is operating. Anything I missed on that, guys?
I don't think so, but I would add that like this is something I do with all my projects, is have like my own internal kind of dashboard with some quick metrics. And this is the first time I'm seeing this, and it's really nice, Dorian. Like it's like a legit thing. Like I'm going to use this now in all my projects and just throw it in there. You've already got the data, like the kind of stuff I usually show myself. I've already got the data collections, and now I can just display it. So it's I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of pumped up seeing it.
Yeah, it looks really great. Does anyone have any questions on Google Charts or how this is created? Feel free to chime in and ask. I do have one question, Dorian. How are we going to package this and give this to the users? Are we going to be rolling it out in a pattern, or is it just going to be something you can drag and drop from the elements or blocks?
We can definitely do both. It just depends which approach we want to go with it. With the pattern, you get a whole page and setup so you can test it and you already have it running in your app. Using the element method, then you have to set it up for yourself.
You have to go set all the settings. Yeah. So this is a good time for everyone who's kind of new for Bildr, for I think maybe us to explain a little bit about the difference between pages, elements, blocks, and patterns. So these are the 4 things at the top that you see those boxes for. If you click on pages, you're going to see blank page. And then you're also going to see some templates. So we're definitely need to do some work on building out some more templates that are nicely designed for you guys. If there's anything you have in specific, let me know, because I'd rather we build something that you guys will actually use than just whatever we think you might use. So if you have anything there, let me know. So same, very similar for all of these. You just drag and drop a page onto your canvas, and then you start working with it, designing and setting up actions. In the elements list, you'll have things like fields, buttons, input types, password inputs, just a whole bunch of things, typography elements, media elements. So it sounds like we will add Google Charts in here, so you can drag and drop it. And then what you would do is you would go set up all those input arguments in the properties on the right side for that element instance. Then we have blocks. Blocks are things that are really like groups of elements. So you might have like some heading pages that have buttons and divs and images. You'll have the grid list here, the grid row, etc. And then patterns are really going to be for more fully kind of functional and built out things and for integration. So for example, we've got an Airtable pattern. These take a little bit more work to set up because you've got to connect them to the pages in your app. But they do come with everything from the pages, the things that are designed, all of the actual settings and actions that run whatever those various flows are. So these are a little bit more involved. We've got the job board pattern that Mark made, the Stripe integration, and some other things. And then similarly, if you ever build something one time and you want to reuse it, you can either save it as a block or save it as a pattern and be able to share in your other projects or with other people. So that's just a little bit about those and just kind of the different ways that you can bring new things into your project. Okay. All right. So
do you guys have templates like, let's say, very short and small templates for login, registration page, like, field template of, registration fields like this one?
Mhm.
Do you have a catalog of templates like that?
Yeah. So you're probably looking for the user authentication pattern, Fred. So that is one that includes all like the sign in flows, sign up. So someone can sign up for your app. They can sign in. It's got reset password pages. What else does it have, Drew? Could you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, that one's more like the bare bones user authentication stuff. And I actually have a separate one that maybe we'll just build into this one, which actually does have more, I think, what you're getting at with like registration pages, like profile pages with full fields and like that whole side. You can just hit import on the pattern and everything will come in. And then, your users can sign up with and without a password. They can sign in with a password or a magic link. They can retrieve their password and reset it. Like just all those things that's what's there now. And then they'll have like a profile page they can go to, and then you'll be able to go, if you want custom fields in addition, add those fields into the data collection and then just copy the fields that are already there. And it'll be
for
very easy to
example,
customize. Basically.
Google or Facebook logins.
We do have that. I don't know if Dorian, you might even know a lot more than me. I don't know that much about all the logins, but I do know that we have a set of them right now that work and many more coming. So I just personally haven't tried them in Bildr yet. So I don't know if I should speak to them, but yeah, I mean, all that stuff like Twitter login, Google.
Yeah, which ones are we about to release, Dorian?
Yeah, so we're working on Facebook, Twitter, sign in with Apple, and Firebase is the other one.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Almost there.
Yeah, almost there. So similar to that, it's all stuff that we want to use too, and give you guys the ability to log in with Bildr that way. And then anytime we make something like that, we will give it to you guys either in actions, a pattern, or in the elements, so you can use it as well. And then guys, if I could get some help with answering questions in the chat, that would be awesome. I'm not sure if I missed any. I'll just go through real quick.
Everything might be answered, but if I missed it, feel free to shout out or chat again.
Okay, awesome. Okay, any questions, any remaining questions on the charts? Okay, so when we have that ready, I think there's what's left on it, Dorian, that we might need to do before we can give everyone the pattern?
I just need to clean it up. That way we can release it as a pattern, and I'll publish it as a pattern, and then I'll give you that pattern link so you can share it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when Dorian has that ready, we will put it out in the community, and then we'll also add it to the created patterns list. So anytime you click on patterns, you'll see it there, and you can just import it into your projects. All right, wonderful. So it looks like we have a new person in the Bildr Hour. Mark, welcome. Feel free to add an introduction of yourself and where you're from and what you're learning in the chat if you would like. All right, so Dorian, thank you so much for showing us the Google charts. That was great. It looks really good. You did good, man. And then what's next? Michael Gill. Michael worked on something that's got a few different plugins. It's beautifully designed. I love the colors. Everything Michael does is super cool. So I would love to turn the floor over to you if you can walk us through what you built, how you kind of built these plugins, where the inspiration from that came from, and then if you want to show them.
Sure, absolutely. So let me share. All right, so what I did was a sort of, I called it a JS grab bag, but it was just a collection of a handful of JavaScript plugins that I thought would be cool to use in some of my projects, and then I realized that they would be useful in a lot of projects for others. So I'll kind of first show you what the plugins do, and then I'll talk about how I built them. So let me refresh this one here. So this first one is a plugin called Scroll Reveal, and it does exactly that. So as you scroll, it reveals these different elements with a nice little fade in effect. That's pretty commonly used. You're probably so used to it that you may not even notice it when you go to a lot of sites nowadays, because it's pretty commonly used, but it gives a nice dynamic feel to your page. I also implemented this plugin called I typed. I'm sure, again, you've seen this on a lot of landing pages where it sort of dynamically types a few different words, and it'll untype them and type different words and so on. Another one that I implemented is called Medium Editor, and it's a inline, oh, it's not working, hang on. There it goes. It's an inline editor, so you can highlight the text, and then you can use this sort of toolbar to modify it. This is I mean, it got its name from medium.com, but it's pretty widely used as well. And you've probably seen it everywhere. It's a nice way to give your users the ability to edit their text without taking up a bunch of space with a typical sort of WYSIWYG tool set. And then this one is a sort of credit card. It's an input field for credit cards that will detect sort of what type of credit card you have and whether it's valid or not. So as you start typing,
Ooh.
it formats it in the set of blocks that's specific to that card type. And it also, like I said, detects what type it is. Oops, hang on. Sorry, my hotkeys didn't work. So as you type, it can detect if it's a Visa or American Express, whatever, and it changes the little icons. So that's kind of useful as well. So these are just 4 different JavaScript libraries that are out there. And I implemented each of these as a different element type in Bildr. So I've got custom elements for each. If I scroll to the bottom of my elements window, you'll see the 4 are down here. They don't have icons on them, but there's iTyped, medium editor, the input credit card field for cleave, and scroll reveal. And the reason I did these as element types, one, I wanted them to be just sort of drag and drop into my pages, but also I knew I was going to share these out and wanted to be able to share them. So I set them up as element types that have their own render function. And I'll kind of walk you through what that looks like. So if I go to the first one, scroll reveal, it's just this one element on my page here at the bottom. There's really no input for this. So what I'll do is actually take you to the element type itself. So it's an element type called scroll reveal. I can't remember exactly where I copied this from, but I know last week we talked about duplicating element types and then modifying them. That's exactly what I did. I think I just took like the input element type, I duplicated it, named it scroll reveal, and really didn't change anything here. I think I deleted all the arguments because again, there's no input that you need to put in the editor. So I deleted all the arguments, and I think that was really all I did. I left the event triggers, none of that really matters. Where the magic happens is in the render function. So I think Mark and Drew, last week, you guys were talking about this render HTML element function. I duplicated this I duplicated it 4 times for each of my 4 element types, and then I just started modifying them from there. So for the scroll reveal one, it's just a very small piece of JavaScript that really, I use this method that Drew talked about last week, I think it was, the add header script that comes from the Bildr API. So I use that to actually load the external library for scroll reveal. And then I have this weird set timeout. This is kind of a hack, but I had to do this to allow time for this external library to load before it actually uses the external library to render on the page. So all it does very simply is it looks for this class called scroll reveal on any of the elements on the page, and it triggers the library on them. So that one's kind of straightforward, not a lot there. I typed, so this is the animated typing one. I turned this off in the studio because it actually runs in the studio. It runs on the canvas and looks nice, but I was getting some kind of a issue with my window size, and I figured out that it came from this plugin. So I ended up turning it off. So it doesn't run in the studio, it looks blank, but what it is this one element type. And on here, I do have input arguments. So what I did was I created 5 lines of text, and you could type 5 different things and have it cycle through. there's no rhyme or reason why it's 5. You could do 10, you could do 20, whatever you want. I think for most use cases, at least when I've seen this used, it's 3 to 5. So I thought 5 was good. I actually only loaded it up with 4 lines of text. And so my custom function basically just looks at the inputs, and any that are empty, it will skip. So I can show you that one as well. So let's see, where is it? Right here. So again, I think I just duplicated the regular input element, and I just deleted whatever arguments were there, and I created my own 5 arguments, just text line 1 through 5, and really just set the type of the element to a text input field, and that's about it. These are arguments that I can now access inside of my custom script. So on the render function, again, I duplicated render HTML element, called it render I typed. And in here is the JavaScript for it. I won't run through all this unless somebody has specific questions on it, but at a high level, what it does is it looks at all of those 5 fields where I input text, and it loads them into, it basically pushes them into an array of lines of text, and then it passes that to this external library for I typed. Again, I'm using that add header script method to load the external library, but it passes it those lines of text, and then basically just tells it to apply whatever styles you have set in the editor, and that's it, and it loops through those. So again, the main takeaways here are using this add header script, and then I pretty much went through the documentation for I typed, which was available on their GitHub repo, and kind of just looked at how it's structured, how you utilize the plugin, how you utilize the library, and I just took what I wanted from it. Didn't use everything. There's more that this library can do, but I took what I needed it to do. And that's about it there. And pretty much the same for the medium editor. So this one, again, was a, which one is it? It's this one. It's a custom element type. It just has one input for, well, this is the default input for the text, but it's a custom element type called medium editor. And nothing, I didn't really do anything here. It's all in the render element function. So render medium editor. Again, some custom JavaScript, loading the external JavaScript library. This one also comes with CSS because of the little icons that come up above your text. So basically loading the external JavaScript and the CSS, and then calling it on any element that has this class editable applied to it, which my custom element type does. And that's about it for that one. And then lastly, the credit card input type. Well, here we go. So again, this was a custom function. This one, I retained a lot more of the existing code that's in the render HTML element function. So like I said, I duplicated that one. And I maintained most of what was in here. There's some additional code that I added here at the bottom. Yeah. So this is basically the part that I added. It's really for implementing the icons for the different credit card types is really all it's doing there. But again, the magic is loading, using that add header script to load the external library for Cleave, which is the plugin I used. And then I'm also loading Font Awesome because that's what I'm using to load those icons. And that's pretty much it. So these are available as a pattern. I did put them on my page in the community under JS Grab Bag. And if you click and import the pattern, you'll basically get this, there's 4 pages. Each one has the element type dropped on it. And then I did add a 5th one just with links to the sources in case you want to get to the documentation and customize it further yourself. But yeah, that's what I did. Any questions on that? Guess I should check the chat.
Amazing. So for anyone who's new, like what Michael just did here shows 2 different things. One is if there's something in Bildr that is not there in the base toolkit, like in pages, elements, blocks, or patterns, you can go create it. You're never going to be stuck. If there's a cool idea for something and it's not in there by default, like you can do it. And so what Michael did is he went into the element types list. He duplicated some of the existing elements, and then he went and made all these changes and made it his own. So if you do know how to code, or you do know how to go to these different libraries or functions, copy, paste things, bring them in, you have a ton of extensibility there. The second thing is Michael knows how to do this stuff, but a lot of us don't. He went and did it and turned it into something that now those of us who don't know how to do can bring into your projects. So there is those 2 different aspects of it. So one of them is like you're never stuck, you can extend. And the second is whatever someone makes can be packaged and shared with other people so that those of us who are maybe less technical, like, very little knowledge of code or how to do that, can then use those things in a lot easier of a way. So Michael, thank you so much. And yeah, if anyone has questions on this or questions for Michael, please feel free to chime in or chat in the channel. And Michael, you walked us through one of the custom elements you had created in the last Bildr Hour, right?
In the last one, I think I went through the CSS flex pattern that I did. Yeah. But this is, honestly, this is what I love about Bildr, is coming from a background as a developer. Like anytime I wanted to implement something, I could probably find a library where somebody already did it. And I was like, oh, there's a library available. I'll just implement that. Like most of the time I was not creating my own input types, for custom fields. I was using a library like Cleave to do that. And if you look at something like Cleave, Bildr already has most of these field types in there. In fact, when I looked at the library, I think the only one I didn't see was the credit card type. So that's why I went with it. But that's why I love it, because I can literally still do anything I want to do, including implementing a library that somebody else has already built. And it's very quick to do it in Bildr. So I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Michael, will you chat us your Bildr profile, the link
Yes.
to your profile? So if you go to Michael's profile, you'll see the 2 different patterns that he has, and you can go check them out. If you look at it in the pattern view, you can dissect the whole thing and look at the actions, the elements that are set up, all of that stuff, and then you choose to import it into whatever project you're wanting.
Yeah, and I'll be adding
cool.
more. I already know what I want to do for the next grab bag.
Oh yeah, tell us, or do you want to wait?
I'll wait. I'll just say that
Okay.
when I originally set out to do this, I was going to do like 10 or 12 plugins, and Mark was like, dude, just put out the 4 that you have. Like people could use that. So I limited myself to 4. So I still have a list of other ones that I want to do, and I'll be working on those next.
Awesome. Very, very excited. Thank you so much, Michael. Looks like a lot of people are really stoked to be able to use this. So lastly, it looks like we have a little bit of time left. Since Mark's not here, I feel like I can be like, hey, let's take a look at the new community. Drew, are you down to show us? I'll give you